This is Ryan Roy of Tanadrine Studios, and welcome back to installment 4 of the Developer's Diary. Wow, I can't believe it's been half a year since I produced one of these. There is so much new stuff that I have to talk about that I don't even know where to begin. I think this time around I'll cover the following. Before I began actually animating the Delura project, the developers of the game Asheron's Call produced some cool content, and I just couldn't resist making something to coincide with their big November update of 2010. I also saw this as an opportunity to get some practice animating, try out some special effects, and do some minor compositing. The cinematic was a small project, so it was done within the time frame of about 9 days. You may be interested to know that some of the stuff used in this video was actually used in Delura. For instance, in this scene with Asheron, I created a vortex-like environment by simply taking subpatched cones and twirling them around with lazy points attached. I used this exact same technique to make this scene here in Delura Episode 1. I also got a bit of practice in compositing. This specific sequence, for instance, was separated into different layered clips because for some reason 2D transparent textures for Bowseron's wings combined with sprite-based particle effects gave me problems. Lightwave couldn't seem to tell which was closer to the camera, so I got things like this where a particle behind an object actually appeared in front of it. Unfortunately, it's obvious that my video editing software is not optimal for this task, and anything that has an outline that doesn't consist of solid pixels can leave an unsightly outline, which you can clearly see here. I have looked into a powerful piece of software called Adobe After Effects, and it's actually the industry standard for post-production type work. I really want this program, and it seems infinitely better for high quality post-production special effects, image modification, and compositing, but at the hefty price of about $1,000, I simply cannot justify the heavy investment for my simple purposes. For now, I'll just stick with my usual methods of creating special effects directly through Lightwave and through video crossfading. As I've said before, it's not optimal, but it works. Anyways, let's move on to my commentary on Delura so far. Since I'm currently in a semester of college where I was limited to taking a single very easy class, I'm very underwhelmed work-wise. The college I'll be transferring to told me that I was not allowed to attend 2 colleges at once, and without any other classes to take, I simply could not fill up my schedule. I know this is off topic, but the reason I mention this leads to my short-term goal. To show that I can produce 1 episode of Delura on a monthly basis if most of my time and energy were diverted into it. So far, I think I'm doing pretty good, though it's more like 1 month and 5 days, as you can see from these YouTube upload dates. I won't be able to update Delura this frequently once I start attending college full-time again, so the series will likely fall back into a bi-monthly or longer schedule per episode starting this summer. I really hate the career field I'm going into, which is business administration and possibly business law, but the market in those areas are a heck of a lot better than the 3D media field, where you currently have to possess the skills of a rocket scientist just to get your foot in the door of a low-paying job or worse, succumbing to places like poptent.com where they expect you to treat every job like a contest, praying that your submission that you put work into will be picked and that you'll actually be paid for it. If it were up to me, I'd make 3D production my career, but I could probably rant about what's wrong with the media industry all day, so I'm just going to stop myself here. Let's move on. With 3 Delura episodes released now, I have a good pool of content to reflect on. I know that I still have a lot of improvement to do in many areas, but I'm going to criticize what I feel were the most glaring of problems out of the 3 installments. For episode 1, I feel that the 2 biggest issues were camera movement and gimbal locking. Animating in first person is a lot harder than I expected it to be. You always have to have the camera window open, otherwise you don't know exactly what is showing in the shot and what's not. I typically move the figures first and then worry about the camera afterwards, not vice versa. To emphasize on the camera movement, look at this part here. Notice that the camera goes down and to the right in 2 angles instead of being a smooth and seamless movement. This smoothing problem was of course present in the arms of the character as well. I later found that I could eliminate a good chunk of this problem by setting AutoKey to all motion channels rather than just modified. It really does make a difference, and I don't understand why this wasn't the default setting in Lightwave. If you're working with this program, save yourself some headache and turn this option on. It'll make your animations look a lot better. Another big issue was gimbal locking. Gimbal locking is when rotational controls get situated in such a way that one of them starts to perform the same action as the other, limiting your control of the object. This is most obvious in this part where the elbow of the figure is unnaturally going side to side as they manipulate the screen. It was also really challenging to get the cockpit to rotate and pitch downward here. I don't think this part looked bad, but it took a lot more work to animate than it really should have. For objects without bones, this is an easy fix, as you can simply parent the object to a null, in which having two separate controllers for pitch, bank, and heading effectively eliminates gimbal locking altogether. For objects with bones, however, the solution to gimbal locking is a bit more difficult. I don't like the idea of having two controllers for every single bone because it complicates the animation process. This is an area that I need to work on, obviously, and eventually I hope to have more robust character rigs than I do now. In time, there's going to be action scenes where I need really tight control over my character's movements. Episode 2's biggest problems, I feel, were pacing and audio balancing. I can agree with commenters that the intro could have been shortened a bit, especially after the intro music stops playing. In a good animated feature, the viewer should seldom have the urge to skip forward, even when re-watching the episode. In short, some trimming wouldn't hurt. Get it? Short trimming? Yeah, I know it's lame. The second issue of audio balancing really hurt the effectiveness of the second installment. The viewer should never have to change the volume as they watch, and I agree that the audio was too loud in some areas and too soft towards the end. I took special note of this and made certain that Episode 3 wouldn't suffer from this same issue. Episode 3 really suffered from lack of ambient sounds and lighting issues. Although I did put some ambient stuff in, like the mechanical sounds at the beginning and the rustling of Carnegie's clothing, which was actually my jacket, I think the second half of the animation really could have used some more love in the audio department, such as footsteps, or a slight echoing in the larger domed room, etc. I also think a small music compilation could have been utilized at the end to make the ending less jarring and sudden as well. There's other audio improvements that could have been made, but these specific ones stick out the most for me. As far as lighting goes, it had mixed results. This scene between Lucius and Carnegie was actually rendered with the radiosity option enabled. Radiosity basically calculates how light bounces around in a scene and adds color and more accurate lighting to every image. It's obvious that I didn't have a firm grasp on how radiosity operates, as the rendered results, while I felt it looked good, had side effects of flickering. I also didn't realize that if I do small separate renders for chunks of frames, the radiosity is calculated differently, resulting in jarring changes of lighting in instances like this, or this, or this. What the heck, has Lucius been eating greasy potato chips all day? How does he keep his figure? I later found out that there's other steps that I have to take in order to prevent these problems. I probably won't be utilizing radiosity for a while, and if I do, a lot of research and development is going to go into it before it's even considered to avoid the flickering and consistency issues. It also bumps up my render times significantly, with a frame like this one taking 30 seconds to render, and this one requiring a hefty 4 minutes. Long render times make corrections really hard to do, and because I didn't even know about the flickering issues until it was too late, it actually made it into the final video. Of course, out of all the big issues I've talked about, there are many other small ones too, like excessive clipping, needed movement adjustments, composition against color theory, lighting errors, non-optimal camera placement, etc., etc., etc. Being the sole animator, 3D artist, video and sound producer of Delura, it's a constant balancing act between not only production and detail, but also between my visual and audio skill sets. Making sure that all aspects of every installment receive an equal amount of care is something that I feel I'll be working on for a long time. All I can do is look back on every episode, take detailed notes as to what was done right and what was done wrong, listen closely to the people who comment about our work, and move on. Hopefully becoming a little better at the things I do in the next installment and learning a few new tricks along the way. If we ever had a reason to do it, I'd personally like to go back when we reach around episode 10 or so and remaster all of the old ones to give them the polishing that they deserve. As the final segment for this edition of the Developer's Diary, I want to talk about some of the new challenges I've been facing as a director. About a week before the first episode was even published, I began the search for voice actors to fill the various roles that would eventually appear in the series because I knew that it might take some time to find the right people. I require the voice acting to be done ahead of time, since the way a character speaks has a very heavy influence as to how they move in dialogue scenes. To seek out these needed vocals, I looked for communities which catered specifically to both voice actors and those looking for them. Two major ones geared towards volunteer work from what I can see are the Voice Acting Club and the Voice Acting Alliance. Both are pretty good resources, but I prefer the Alliance in favor of their superior website design and better organization of topics. Upon sending my first few auditions out, I got many responses, and it wasn't always easy to narrow down which person might be best for the role. I got permission from several of these people to play back their auditions here. Let's take a moment to listen to some of these auditions.
I disagree with your methods. It is reckless to involve Carnegie. You're not a telepath. Don't pretend to be one. Ugh, you're right again. Damn you and your instinct.
It's not what I'm looking for. I imagine Zell needs to be more casual in the way she speaks, almost cheerful, but not overly so. It needs to sound more spontaneous and less rigid. To put it simply, this auditionee has an excellent voice and a lot of potential, but needs to be able to adapt vocals just a little bit more.
Attention employees. As most of you are aware of now, the largest disaster in the history of the Tenedrine Interplanetary Mining Company has devastated us all. We have lost the lives of over 200 people across all of our underground locations, and many others are critically injured.
Although I feel this person's voice is actually pretty adaptable for many different types of characters, I don't think that it passes for an older and more heavyset sounding individual like what I was looking for in Carnegie. I feel the acting was a bit overdramatic in this clip, and the way these vocals were performed didn't convey the mood that I was intending to have with this dialogue. I actually wanted Carnegie to sound like he was really bothered by the events that happened.
I hate Silgarian medical personnel. They just hire them because they're cheaper and save money on equipment costs.
I don't think this guy's gonna wait. This guy sent multiple takes, so let's listen to another one and see what that one sounds like.
I hate Silgarian medical personnel. They just hire them because they're cheaper and save money on equipment costs.
There we go. Now this is the type of voice I was looking for in Rudo. I look at the picture and I listen to the voice and I feel it meshes really well, not only in regards to the sound of the voice itself, but the tone and tempo as well. If this guy had not sent multiple outtakes, I feel his chances of getting this role would have been significantly reduced. Let that be a tip to those looking for roles to fill in voice acting. Ask the producer if they mind you sending multiple outtakes if you're not 100% clear on how the character's tone of speaking should be. It might give you an edge over the competition and allow you to experiment with the role. This next audition clip is actually an excerpt from just one of several links that this person provided. His demo reel is actually pretty diverse in regards to the roles that he plays, but for the sake of contrast, I want to play this particular clip.
Drow Tales Studio presents Alstrat's Journal, Chapter 2, Shashi. This audiobook is the second in an ongoing series. To listen from the beginning, please visit drowtales.com.
No, I totally don't see this guy's voice matching with the character at all. It sounds too cool, too calm, too formal, Wait, this guy's voice is perfect. No, not for Charlie, for this guy. Yep, that's right. The guy who played Lucius in episode 3 of Delura actually auditioned for Charlie. But he didn't get that role, this guy did.
Ah, gods, please save the droopy-eyed me so sad the world is against me emo talk for later. Come on, you'd never turned down free stuff before.
It's one of those really rare situations where the voice is such a close match to what I envisioned in another character that it was an instant shoo-in. And since I hadn't even gotten the chance to audition Lucius yet, it saved me the trouble of having to do so. The voice actor for Lucius really stood out to me, and I really think he did a great job in episode 3. Sometimes I've found that I receive auditions that are poorly suited for a specific role, but would be perfect for another. I actually have taken a note of some of the voice actors who have sent me clips and may come back to them and contact them down the road. Just because an audition doesn't fit doesn't make the person a bad voice actor, and I hope everyone that I turned away realizes that. But even with that said, it's not enough for me to just review auditions. Personally, I feel I could have done better as a director, and I'm going to be working on a few things which I feel hindered my effectiveness as one. One major problem is that I don't feel my information was concise or clear enough, and it really could have been organized better too. I think the next time I do an audition, I'll be more straight and to the point and leave out information that I don't feel is critical. One other issue I had was in regards to the characters of Carnegie and Zelmanuminine. I actually ended up providing voice acting for both the characters myself, and I know that my voice was not optimal for either role, especially Carnegie's. Now, I gave myself plenty of time and auditioned both characters well before I actually started to animate them, but none of the candidates seemed to fit into the roles well enough to justify having them cast. This brings us to this question. What does this problem have to do with me being an ineffective director? Well, I discovered after the fact that there's actually a larger talent pool out there than I originally thought. It's not enough to just sit and wait for people to come to you, you have to go to them too. In websites like the Voice Acting Alliance and even other places like YouTube or Newgrounds, there's a lot of people who put up their voice acting demo reels for developers like myself to listen to and determine whether they are compatible for any roles that I might have. I feel that if I had realized this and had bothered to take this extra step of looking for these demo reels, my chances of finding a compatible candidate for Carnegie and Zell would have been greatly increased. I'm pretty much a director in training from this point onward, since every episode of Delura after the second installment featured guest starring voice actors and newly emerging roles. Directing is not nearly as easy as it sounds, and I now understand why people would be hired for the sole purpose of simply telling people what to do. To convey ideas and translate them into a concise and easy to understand format that people can understand fully and completely from my vantage point is among the hardest aspects of directing. This is not a serious example by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel it applies strongly to what I'm talking about. Take a look at this street sign near where I live. It reads, "Caution, no sidewalk, children in street." This message is really ambiguous if you really think about it and can be read in a multitude of ways. For instance, when you read the word caution, does that mean the children are dangerous? Is it even talking about the children at all? Is there some kind of random flying rock that's going to hit my car as I'm driving by? No sidewalk. Does this mean that I'm not allowed to build a sidewalk here? Are sidewalks frowned upon in this neighborhood? What's going on here? And children in street. Does this mean that children are in the street? Oh, so they are under the street. So, wait, maybe the caution part means that their hands will sprout out and slash your tires as you drive. Or, wait, now this is a problem because, we don't know if the message applies to pedestrians or drivers. So the pedestrians could be walking by and those children under the street could grab your leg and pull you under or something. Oh, wait a minute, I just noticed this line here. Does that mean maybe this is a decoded message where you have to divide the upper portion by the lower portion and convert the letters into like some kind of numeric code. It kind of looks like there's a decimal down here, so it could be a mathematical equation, but it could also be an abbreviation. What if this STR thing stands for something like strength or I don't know. I don't know what EAT would stand for though. Everywhere, I really don't know what that could stand for. I am so confused right now, I could die. Do you see what I'm trying to convey here? Messages can be read in many different ways, which is why I'm kind of intimidated by the concept of directing. Some people have gotten some pretty long emails from me, and I feel that poses a problem too, because by overloading the recipient with information, I'm actually concealing the base message that I'm trying to convey. This constant juggling act between information overload and ambiguity makes my head hurt just thinking about it. You really, really have to be a good communicator to bring out the greatest potential, not only in the actors, but the project in question as well. Wish me luck here, because I feel I'm going to need it. To conclude this segment, I want to thank everyone who gave me permission to use their audition clips. These clips I know don't always represent a person's best work, so I think it really shows some courage to allow me to use them, and I really appreciate it. Of course, there are many other things that I could talk about, but I think I'll conclude installment 4 of the developer's diary here. You know, I look back at my very first 3D animation, and I think of how far I've come since my first diary entry. It's really hard starting from square one, and there are many times where I would get stuck or discouraged. Hell, I still get stuck or discouraged now, but at least at this point, I can look back and reflect on what I've done. This is an important milestone in my eyes. I found that being able to compare my earliest works to my present very motivating, and I can only imagine what level I'll be at several years from now, looking back at this developer's diary and thinking to myself, how the hell did I tolerate my own work?
Here you go, Connor. It's a nice cold homemade root beer.